Pro Series podcast is shifting gears. Instead of expert interviews, we're talking with school leaders about the moments that led them into education and what is currently sustaining their career. These conversations are not just about expertise. They are about the experience and people behind the job. We will hear honest stories, small wins, real challenges, and the tools or tricks helping them keep their heads above water. Each episode shares a glimpse of what it takes to lead a school and stay human in the process. Today's guest is Dr. Leticia Archuleta, Executive Director at Health Leadership High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. A licensed clinical social worker and proud member of the Choctaw Nation, Dr. Archuleta has spent more than 20 years working in schools, building programs that center equity, language access, and holistic student growth. Her path to leadership started in social work and clinical support, which gives her a unique lens for understanding students' social emotional needs and creating systems that truly break barriers. In our conversation, Dr. Archuleta shares how Health Leadership High School is transforming education by paying students for their internships, offering on-site healthcare and mental health services, and making sure every student feels seen and supported. She also talks about her Student Success Report Card, a tool designed to help students measure their growth against themselves and not each other, and how that idea is reshaping how her school defines success. It's an inspiring look at what it means to lead with compassion and innovation. So here's my conversation with Dr. Leticia Archuleta. We hope you enjoy. Leticia, how are you?
I'm doing well, Missy. It's so great to chat with you and glad to be here.
I know. I'm so glad to have you on. And before we fully jump in, so, I obviously connected with you when you first, partnered with CheckBox Pro, and that was, really fun. But I don't really get to see the bios at that point, right? Like y'all come and we just kind of get straight down to business. And then in preparation for this, I asked for your bio, and I'm reading through your bio and I was like, I texted your EA and I was like, okay, now I'm a little bit intimidated. I was like, she's an impressive human. She's an impressive human. So I'm going to just, thank you. Thank you for coming on to the CheckBox Pro series and sharing all the good work you're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, like I said, I gave people kind of high level overview. Think about what you might read on LinkedIn and then, but my first question to my leaders always on this show is just tell us how you got into education. You have a very interesting background, so don't spare us any details. We really want the more twists and turns, the better. But yeah, kick us off and let us know how you got here.
Okay, I will. I'll share with you because it is a little bit an adventurous route for sure. So both of my parents are educators. And so education has always just sort of been a part of, I think, my DNA. And I was always interested in going into the health sector and going into biology pre-med. When I went into my undergrad, I was doing courses in biology, and then I started taking some psychology classes. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I realized, wait a minute, maybe this is my calling. Maybe this is for me. So I ended up getting a bachelor's in child psychology, and then I went into social work. So I got my master's in social work and became a clinical social worker. Now, during the time that I was working on my master's, I was also a substitute teacher, and I took a lot of long-term courses coverage when I was subbing. And I think, like I said, education has always been a part of my DNA. It's just who I am. It's where I grew up. It's the discussions we had at home, and I loved it. So when I finished my master's in social work, I ended up going into clinical social work and became a social worker in the schools. And it was elementary, middle, high. And I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work, and I started delving in more and more. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is ensuring that individuals get, whether it's education, whether it's mental health support, whether it's medical care, that they're able to access that in their native language. So language is huge for me. And I started working with the deaf and hard of hearing population. And I realized I need to develop my skill set. I need to develop my knowledge acquisition in ASL. So I started taking courses in American Sign Language and became fluent in sign language. And over the course of years, it was probably, about 14 years in, I got a position with a charter school for the deaf and hard of hearing population. And I was in a director position there. And in that director position, absolutely loved it. Loved the leadership element of the work, really engaging with students in a more unique way, and also really thinking about academic and educational outcomes through the lens of social emotional learning, as well as academic and educational pedagogy. So that was really important for me. The language was important for me, connecting to our underserved communities, making sure that their voices were being heard. That was everything. And so I did that for quite some time, and I was interested in going further and getting my administrative license. So I did that. I completed my administrative license, and a few years later a position opened up at Health Leadership High School, which is all focused around, as you would expect, health and health sector, so educational outcomes in the health sector, and applied for the executive director CEO role. And that's kind of my story and how I am here today. So it's exciting and enjoyable. And I'll tell you that currently we have about four of us here at the school that are fluent in ASL, and we have a few of our students who are also fluent in ASL. So trilingual, English, Spanish, and American Sign Language. So talk about giving access to our communities and their native language. It's incredible.
My word. That really is. I mean, I don't know that we all have that sense of like language being so important, but
Mm,
or thinking about it, right? Like you take it for granted because you're like, this is the language I learn. And until you're in communities where, yeah, you're butted up against like whether or not I can communicate with you. And there's a limit to how much we can connect or I can support or whatnot. So tell me, sorry if I missed it, apologies, but like that kind of came to you a little bit early on in your educational, like your studies. But was there a class that got you into like recognizing that language was going to be so important? Was this something just like how did you come to have a focus or an interest in really merging those two and making that kind of the I don't know the word for it, but just I mean, yeah, for it
just
to
the
be such
importance
a
of
value,
language.
yeah, like that
Yeah,
importance.
yeah.
How that becomes such a value for you?
You know, I'm not sure if I can pinpoint it or if it was sort of an organic process along the way. But like I said, growing up, I grew up in the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know, the community is very diverse. And one of the things that I say that we are so rich in is land, culture, and language and diversity. And, you know, working with communities who are marginalized, underserved, living in poverty, you recognize very quickly the dynamics and the hardships that our communities hit when they're in spaces that are incredibly important for them to be in. Like, I'll give an example. You know, you go to your healthcare provider. If you're dealing with an ailment and you're not able to explain that in the language that, you know, the provider understands, it's frustrating, it's challenging, it's scary. So I think from a very, very young age in the schools that I grew up in and the communities that I was around, I knew that it was important that we had equity and access to language across the board. And so that just sort of evolved and organically came upon when I moved into a position working at it was at one of the middle schools as a clinical social worker. There was a group of they had a program for the deaf hard of hearing, and they said, you know, we need a social worker to work with the deaf hard of hearing. And I did not have the language or skill knowledge at that point, but I said, I want to do this, I want to learn. And at the time, in my novice mindset, I was like, oh, I got this. I can do this. And, you know, I quickly realized, well, wait a minute, this is more than just a language. It's about a culture. It's about a community. It's about embracing and being open minded because it's a challenge too for the deaf hard of hearing. You know, their perspective is, why do you want to learn, right? You don't
Interesting.
have to because you're from a hearing community,
Mm,
but it's about really embracing the community as a whole and saying, yeah, I'm an ally with you, and I'm willing to put that time and energy so that we can collectively come together as a community to advance outcomes. And that was my focus. That was my
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. That is powerful and empowering for, them and just to be able to see like, yeah, there's space for us to have be accepted and our language to be accepted. That's
Absolutely.
definitely marginalized and probably very, very lonely community. If you're to take the time to learn that is challenging. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you've come to now health leadership, which remind me, when did you join? What was that?
2019. So if you remember, in 2020, we went into COVID closure. So I showed up in August of 2019, and by March of 2020, we were in full COVID closures. Yes, it was a very fun first year as an executive director. Yes,
Yeah, just baptized by fire right there. They're just like
absolutely.
figure it
Absolutely.
out. So every year from there on is just going to be a breeze for you because if you can do that, if you can navigate
Rip
that
off
brand
the
new world,
Band-Aid.
heck yeah, you're a pro. You're a pro. Okay. Well, I mean, so let's talk a little bit, yeah, about health leadership. I want to hear a little bit more about just that school and its focus. Just, specifically, like, what are you most proud of? What's happening there that you are just feeling really good and want to share to highlight y'all's community?
There's There is so much to be proud of. Okay, so let me think about where I begin. Well, I'll share with you. So last Wednesday, we were honored with the New Mexico Hospital Association. They have their big conference, and all of the donations that get submitted to this conference, the New Mexico Hospital Association will match that, and that funding is going to come to Health Leadership High School to our students. So so excited, so
Yes.
incredibly proud.
Yeah.
Our students, we took about 25 to 30 students with us to this event. Two of our students were up on stage and presented. They did a speech, and we just heard from the community partners how incredibly proud they were to see the students be so confident and speak so articulate. And without notes, by the way, these kiddos
Oh,
just get up there and they
yeah.
speak.
Good on them. That's
And
impressive.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't help but have that moment of like the proud mama, right?
Uh-huh.
The other thing that I will say too is we also, so in Albuquerque in New Mexico, there's two options for authorization. You can either be authorized by the state or you can be authorized by our local public entity, which is Albuquerque Public Schools. And so we are authorized under the umbrella of Albuquerque Public Schools, and every 3 to 5 years, depending on when you get reauthorized, you will get 3 to 5 years. And so everybody always hopes for the 5 years. So we are up for our reauthorization. Just completed that. It's a pretty big feat getting all of that done. But what I will say that I'm proud of with that is myself and our team work really, really hard to break down barriers. That's kind of our focus as an educational entity, is that we do not want students to say, I can't do that because I don't have a ride. I can't do dual credit because my mom can't pick me up at 2:30 to take me to the community school to do a dual credit or to the university. So we break down barriers. And one of the things that we did during this process of our recharter is asking our community, our students, our families, our staff, just getting feedback. So we got feedback from students. And one of the questions to the students was, what do you like about Health Leadership High School? And their response was, we love that the school breaks down barriers. And that was the words that
I
they
was about to say they
used.
used that language.
They said
Wow.
break down barriers. They said we never have to worry about being told no, that we can't do something, because we always figure it out. And so I'll share a little bit of an example of this. As I mentioned to you a while ago, we went and we started during COVID closures. We had always, as a school, required our students to do internships, practicum placements and internships. It's always been kind of volunteer process. Well, when we went into COVID closures, many of our students had to offset income in their homes. So it was a huge impact. And, a lot of students were coming to me saying, Miss, I can't continue to do a practicum. I got to work. I've got to make money. And I said, how are we going to address this? Like, we've got to figure something out. So it was during COVID that those students that came to me, we paid them. We paid them for an internship. Now, at the time, this was a little bit of a struggle. We only had about 8 students that we were paying at the time. But I said, we've got to figure out a way. So
Yeah.
today, now in 2025, every single one of our students gets paid for an internship. Every single one of our students. So again, getting that barrier out of the way. Another
Yeah.
thing is our students in these practicum placements will say, the reality, miss, is that if I got sick, I don't even think I could go to that clinic or go to that hospital because I don't have healthcare coverage. In this building today, we have a fully functioning school-based health clinic that provides free medical care to all of our students and their siblings. So again, right, addressing the need. What is the need of our community and how do we address it? Throughout the state here, we are seeing tons of closures with behavioral health and mental health agencies and organizations. So on site here, we also have a healing center that provides mental health support services for our community as well. So again, I think the things that I'm most proud of is the true ability to meet the community where they are, to say, what do you need and how are we going to answer it? Now, I'll be honest with you. I didn't always know the answers right away or how this was going to happen or what we were going to do, but we have an incredible team. And again, I hope as leaders are listening in and hearing this, we all know so well that it's not a siloed practice, that the work that we do is collective, and that the team that we have on board with us is everything. And so working together, coming together, and meeting the needs of our community has been huge. And I always, we put all our blood, sweat, and tears into this work, and you hope for the best. Hearing it from the students, hearing them say the school breaks down those barriers, that was everything for me. So I think that's probably what I am definitely most proud of.
Oh my goodness. So I puddled up, and I got goosebumps just for anybody who's listening and not seeing my face. I'm like, because after having worked, I mean, I come from a middle class, affluent background, right? And it wasn't until I did Teach for America and moved to Memphis and worked in, low income communities and saw, like, you had these kids who were brilliant and had really big dreams, and they just kept coming up against walls that were outside of their control. I'm like, well, you can't drive, you're in middle school, right? Like that, okay. And you can't, just like, there are so many realistic barriers that, yeah, just having to realize and come to terms with the fact that, okay, we have to, like, and their families are working really hard, right? Like it's not like they're coming from homes that don't care and aren't trying to. It's like everybody's doing their best, and there's
That's right.
just a hurdle that feels a little bit insurmountable. And so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that. I love that, y'all. So, I mean, this is a little bit of a pivot, but a piggyback, because I just think about a lot of leaders who are, every school has their unique identifier, right? Like the thing that they are doing, right? Yours is health
Sure.
leadership. And now you've layered onto that all these other really unique aspects and programs and things that have to be sustained. And it requires a lot of extra manpower and hours and think time and strategy, all the things, all while still, just managing being an executive director of an organization. So there's still all the HR paperwork, and there's still the hiring, and there's still all the academics, and there's things like your renewals where you have to, you got to do it. And so I'm curious how you structure your time to be able to, like, when you're trying to come up with a new venture, such as an in-house, health clinic, there's a lot of effort that goes into that, and time. And what does the structure of your weeks look like when you are trying to get something off the ground so that you can have the time to be able to focus on a strategic initiative like this?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think sometimes one of the things too, and I'm sure I'm saying this with leaders listening on saying like, yes, I get it, is you sometimes just don't think about it. You don't think about how daunting an initiative can be or the challenges. You just say, you know what, I've got these incredible kids in front of me and they need my support, and I've got to be their advocate. And there's no stopping. You just
Yeah.
got to do it.
Yeah.
And you knock on doors and some get closed on you, and the ones that open you run through, and right, and you just keep going. I'll be honest with you, the work is exhausting, absolutely
Yeah.
exhausting. And you have to be really, really mindful and thoughtful about how are you managing your work, your home, your life. I have two children, I'm married. How do you manage the home situation and all your day to day, and what do my boys need? And, so there is a lot that you have to juggle. But this is where I lean back into saying, you can't do it alone. And if you try and do it alone, you're going to hit walls and you're going to get frustrated, or you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out really quickly. And when I say a team, I don't just mean, oftentimes people think, oh, my director team or my leadership team. I'm talking about every single person in the building, every single person, your custodian, your clerical staff, your instructors, your educational assistants. Every single person who's in your building matters. And I say this before I hire an individual. I say it in conversations during our professional development. I tell my staff all the time, you've got to love kids. You've got to love the energy that students bring, because students don't always bring the most positive energy. But you've got to be able to embrace that and love that. Because if you love teaching more than you love students, you're going to struggle. You've got to love kids. Like, you've got to just be able to say, you know what? I know that you're struggling. I know that you have a tough day, and I'm not going to take that personal. You coming at me with something isn't personal. So I answer that in a very long-winded kind of way because, Missy, I think it really does boil down to the initiatives are at the heart of our students, right? And when kids come to you with that passion, that care, when they say things like, you know what, this school has allowed me to do something and be in spaces that I would have never thought possible. That's everything. So it gives you that extra when you're a little bit tired. It gives you that extra boost, right? To just keep moving and keep doing the work. And so I always tell my family this as well, because I know people always say, how do you manage like your work and home life, and how do you deal? And I tell my boys all the time, I say, I hope that you see the work that me and your dad do, right? Because my husband does work in a completely different way. He works for the land grant communities here in New Mexico. And it's all about giving back to our communities. And I tell them, I hope that you see this work as role models for you all, because the hard work that we do, the times that maybe I'm not home, that you're independent and able to do what you need to do, because what we do collectively is as a family, is as a team, because we're giving back to our community. And that's everything. So I think, that's how we manage it, that again, it's not a siloed practice. It's not, I'm going to go to work and that's separate and then I'm going to come home. But yes, obviously there's some logistical pieces, right, that you keep separate. Yeah. But really the heart of the work of, we do this because we want to give back to our communities. And I hope, boys, that you see that and that you take those initiatives with you in your leadership roles and in your spaces as young men, to start doing some of the same thing and giving back. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is a gift to your boys, to be able to see that and get that from an early age. And yeah, I think it's okay for kids to see their parents as like, it's like, yeah, I love you, child of mine, right? Like I mean, you bring so much purpose to my life, and I have a responsibility to you as my child. Like, I do have to take care of you. And right. And I am a person over here that has other passions and interests and things. And we get to bring you in alongside that to do this work together, or at least to appreciate the work that I'm doing. In the same way, I'm going to appreciate and love your sports, your arts, your whatever passion projects you eventually, and are investing in. I'm going to come alongside you and do that. And so it's just, I think it's a really important thing for kids to be able to see, like, their parents is more than just mom and dad, right? Like, it's like, I get to be a working person that's contributing. So I think that's really great. Okay. So you touched on some of the challenges, obviously, of just closed doors, balancing home and, work or whatnot. But in thinking specifically about health leadership, and don't worry, I sandwich my, happy challenge. And then we always want to end on a high note. So we'll end on high notes, but just talk to us a little bit about what has been challenging in this role outside of your COVID baptism. What's been hard, whether it's in your role specifically, or maybe just a hurdle that the school has had to overcome? I want to hear a little bit about.
I think one of the big challenges, and again, it's a challenge and it's also something positive, but it's the challenge is that we are our own local education authority, so we're our own LEA. Or and I guess the challenge with that is that like I said, it's both good and bad, right?
Right.
So everything that usually kind of gets overseen and managed in a kind of a big district, we have to do in-house on our own. So, all of the finances, maintenance and operation, governance, and the list goes on and on. All of those things have to be done on our own, and it's a lot. It's a lot of work. We moved, so when we had our COVID closure, we were in an older building, and a new facility had opened up, and we had to go through the whole renovation and design and all of the great things, and that's a big challenge too. So just having to manage the design of a new facility and what that's going to be like, which is why I said I don't know what the building is going to look like yet at the very early stages, but I know we got to have a school-based health clinic.
Yeah.
I know we've got to have, a fully functioning simulation lab where students can do on-site dual credit programming. So all of these things. So those are the challenges. I think there's a lot of challenges that we face right now. There's shortages in our community with health sector providers. And so we're saying, look, we're here to meet those shortages. How can we make the connection financially, right? Federal funding is reducing. We're seeing some pushback with that of, hey, we might not be able to provide an instructor at your school, and again, breaking down the barriers. We don't want to have students go off site for a dual credit program because they may not drive, they may not have a ride. So we want to make sure that those are happening here. So how do we meet that? How do we meet that need? What do we do? How do we address that? Making sure that our pipeline programming, we have connections. But I often say that the pipeline runs about 40 miles, and our kiddos after graduation are falling off after the fifth mile,
Mm.
right? And it can't happen. We've got to make those pipelines shorter. We've got to make the warm pass off, handoff a little bit better. So those are some of the challenges that we face. Some of them, I think the hardest challenges are ones where it's not in our control, right? We'll do everything we can that's in our control to help support the initiatives, but there are some things that are out of our control, and then we have to figure out, okay, what are our loopholes? How do we get around this? How do we make it work? But yeah, I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
It's the reality of our work. It's the reality of everyone's work as educators to really be thinking about how do we think outside of the box? How do we not settle for the status quo? How do we push harder? How do we find ways that can really, really build capacity and educational outcomes for our students?
Yeah, operating as your own LEA is just Texas is in a similar boat. So I'm somewhat familiar with it, and it's just like, oh my goodness, like it's just expensive, and yeah, you have to go out and find everything. I mean, it's just yeah, it's a lot. But to your point, it does allow you to be a little bit more creative. It allows you to be able to think outside the box and form new partnerships and all those things. But sometimes it'd be nice to just I'm like, can we just copy paste? Like, can I just tap into that, please? And okay, so this is, I wanted to ask you this question because earlier you had mentioned something too, and I'm like, oh, I need to, and you may not know the answer. I feel like there's healthcare professionals, there's not as many. Like, I mean, I remember trying to get into my primary care physician for the first time we had moved and I needed a new one. She's like, cool, I will see you in 9 months. 9 months? Who got time for 9 months? Like, I was like, I was like, this is insane. So I'm so thankful that there is a high school that is really focusing on this because I do think that this is a real need. So for students who are graduating, I mean, are you seeing particular trends in a particular field of healthcare? Do y'all have a specialty where we're like, we really want to try to drive traffic in this direction because we see the greatest need? Or is it dictated just about what kind of partnerships y'all are able to have in your community. What does that look like? What are you seeing? Yeah, is there hope? Is there hope for the healthcare profession? I'm
Well,
like,
I sure hope so, because that's right. That's our work. We're seeing a mix, and that's kind of the beauty of our school, is that I say we're a high school. Goodness, like at 14 years old, for these kids to know exactly what they want to do and what they want to get into. I mean, it's not always realistic either.
yeah,
But the great thing about it is that they can do some trial and error now while it's free,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
you don't want to get into college and be 3 years in and say, oh, never mind, I don't want to do this anymore. And, so it gives them, I tell students, you're going to graduate with a traditional diploma and a cherry on top. Because every single one of our students graduates with at least 4 certifications. We have all of our students who are able to take dual credit. There's CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant, EMT, First Responder. We have community health workers. We have a cosmetology barbering program on site, and we continue to evolve and advance, right? Those dual credit opportunities. So I guess kind of going back to the answer is, our students have an opportunity to sort of delve into what they're excited about, what
mhm,
engages them, and learn and develop some skills, get some certifications along the way, and then go from there. And we do see a lot of our students after they graduate wanting to go into the health sector. But like I said, that 40-mile pipeline has got to be shortened. It just has to be. And that's where we're really trying to build those bridges, so that it's a little bit easier for students to get into. Because what happens is they're excited and they're motivated into a career or a field, and then they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this, or maybe this might be too many years in school, or they get overwhelmed.
yeah,
But we are seeing our students engaging in the health sector. We are seeing students see the health sector from a different lens. Many of our students are like, well, I'm not really sure I'm interested in being a nurse or a doctor. But then they see the side of phlebotomy or optometry or all of
mm,
these other areas. And some of our students may have, a family member who owns an electrical business. And I said, that hospitals need electricity, right? So they start
mhm,
seeing kind of the networking in a different way. And then, of course, with the language piece, we have the state seal of bilingualism and biliteracy. So students can graduate with that seal on their diploma as well. So, just giving them an opportunity that when they graduate, they are going to graduate with a stellar resume. It is incredible. So I love that piece. And I know when I tell people all the details of the things that we do here, a lot of times families who are interested for their children, they always say, well, how much is it going to cost? And I said, it's free. We do not charge. And so they're always blown away by that.
yeah,
And I love to see that, yeah, there shouldn't be a cost to that. Every
yeah.
student should have access to incredible academic opportunities.
Genius. It's just genius. It's great. I mean, yeah, kids coming out with, it feels wild to me that we have these 18-year-olds graduate and are like, choose your path and invest lots of money in it. And you're like, wait,
So
that
true.
I don't even know how to open a bank account, right? Like, it's like, how am I supposed to choose this very important thing when there's so many other steps that need to be, trialed and error, and I'm learning so much. So I love that for y'all.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, I think I can surmise. I like to ask this question. What is a superpower? Like, what is your superpower? Because I truly believe every leader has one, and it's what allows the missions of their organizations to thrive is when leaders are truly living into that superpower, right? Like if they know it and they're living it and they're honing it, right? It's what's best for their school communities and just communities at large. So if I'm asking that question of you now, right? What would you say is your superpower?
You know, I I think if I were to answer that, my immediate response to that would be coming from a non-traditional administrative perspective. I think my superpower is really being able to come from a lens of social emotional learning. And I know it's cliche, right? You hear it all the time. "Oh, if students, the Maslow's hierarchy, if students aren't, if they haven't eaten, they're not going to. I get all of that. I understand that piece. But I'm talking about from a deeper level of really, really understanding students from a social emotional lens and taking a different approach and perspective to how we provide education. And so that's something that's really near and dear to me. And at our school, and sometimes people get really kind of blown away with this, but we have restorative justice model. And I believe that when a student misbehaves, when they take from the community, they need to give back to the community. Suspensions, sending them out, it doesn't work. I don't see that working. And kudos to other schools who are able to make that work. But I think when we really think about a holistic approach of how we grow students, how we develop their skill sets to become strong citizens, you have to look at what they're engaging in, what they're doing, and what they're experiencing, and growing that. So not just saying you did something bad, you're out, you're suspended, come back in a week, then there's going to be X, Y, and Z consequences. Yes, consequences are important, but the consequences need to be held within. Students need to be able to take initiative to say, I did something wrong, I made a mistake, and how am I going to be better? So that requires everyone at the school to really have that lens and perspective of how do we nurture and support our students? How do we see them as individuals? When a student comes in late to the school, the first thing that our staff will say is, good morning. How are you doing today? Is everything okay? I see that you came in late, but are you okay? Did you eat some breakfast? Was there traffic? Is everything okay? It's not, you're late. Why are you late? You need to be in class. It's a different approach.
Yeah.
Now, do we still have expectations for students to be on time? Absolutely. Do we still have expectations? Even more so. And I tell students, it's going to feel different. We're going to be on your tail a little more than you might be used to, because we're coming at you from a space of care and concern. We're going to pay attention to some things that you're experiencing, because we know when students are dealing with outside stressors, regardless of how many times we try and say, leave that out the door, that's not realistic.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
These kiddos are young. And then they're here 6.5+ hours a day. We become kind of like an extended family in some way, where we have an onus of responsibility to say, let's pay attention to what your needs are and let's help you to be better, to be stronger. If you're dealing with some things that maybe you shouldn't be dealing with, how do we engage you in positive spaces so that you can see opportunity for yourself in a way that you might have not seen before? And that's, I think, the true beauty of this work. And I think that's what I would say would be my superpower, because I feel like that's what we build into our space every day. And I tell teachers, I want you to engage this in your practice. We have a 3-pillar model that's focused on social emotional learning, of course, curriculum, and community engagement. So every teacher, through a project-based learning lens and model, is looking at how are the students doing academically? How are the state standards being brought in? What are the driving questions to engage them in the work? How are they working with community partners to build that capacity? And how are they doing socially and emotionally to be able to function so that when they leave here, they will be strong citizens, right? I tell students all the time, this is your practice. This is your space. What you do here is going to help you in your workplace environment.
Yeah.
How you learn and what you do here is going to be what you take into those spaces. So learning how to behave well, learning how to engage with people well, learning how to send appropriate emails, all of those things are a part of that growth and development of a student. And so I think that's something that I feel like we really work hard and strive really, really hard to ensure that every single one of our students feels that support and connection here.
I love it. Okay, so then this podcast is equal parts community building, right? Like I want leaders to not feel lonely in this very challenging work that y'all have voluntarily chosen to do and continue to choose year over year, which I'm so appreciative of. But I also want it to be a space for leaders to share best practices and share resources, or right? Like, what are you doing? Is there a resource? Is there a tool? Is there a template? Is there something that you are using on the regular, on the reg, to either hone your superpower, or is there something that you're using that's allowing you to sustain this work in a meaningful way? And that could be personal or professional, right? Like it doesn't have to it could be something I am able to use this at home, which allows me to have capacity to do my job, right? Or, you know what? I'm using this resource at my job so that I can show up more, focused at home when I have to put on my mom hat, right? Or I have to put on my friend hat or my wife hat. So what is there anything that comes to mind for you in either of those spheres?
I mean, I think there's so much, and there's a lot of little different things here and there that I pull from and gain from. And like you said, right, not having to kind of reinvent the wheel. How do we lean in on other spaces and other communities and other practices that are out there? But something that I feel like really is the foundation of our work is project-based learning. It really allows us to scaffold, provide modifications. We have such a diverse community. We have such a diverse group of learners. And so it allows that kind of natural capacity for students to engage and connect with the community, to be a part of their learning. Um, that's huge. We have what's called a collaboration cafe, and that's where we bring in students, we bring in staff, we bring in community partners, all from the community, because we want real world authentic experiences to be discussed. And they pitch projects. So they may say something like, we're dealing with a huge influx of type 2 diabetes in our community. And the students might say, well, my grandmother's dealing with this, and I'd really like to figure out how we can, maybe talk about some nutritional guidelines that could be helpful, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I'm giving kind of a general example. But those are, I think, ways that allow students to be a part of their learning, to be engaged in it, and to take an active movement in being change agents at such early and young age. So I think that's something that's incredible. I love project-based learning. The other is actually something that I've been evolving and developing since my dissertation. So I've been working on it. When I completed my doctorate, my dissertation was on intersectional EQ. So we talk a lot about IQ, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, your IQ, but where do we leave off in understanding emotional intelligence, and how do we build and develop that skill set? So one of the things that I've been really wanting to develop even more so is something that I'm coining a student success report card. And essentially what that is how do we look at each student but compare the student to themselves? As
Mm.
educators, we tend to do this often, whether we do it intentionally or unintentionally. We will compare students to each other. We will say things like, especially even from siblings, right? Well, their brother always comes with their backpack and pencils and they're always ready to go. Why are they not? But the reality is that they're two different human beings. And when we don't have our own emotional intelligence to understand the needs of our community and the needs of our students, we're going to come from a different lens. We're going to come from an assumptive lens of, well, why can't they? Well, somebody else can, and they're dealing with struggles, so they should be able to do the same. And it's not fair, and it's not the right way. So the student success report card is a tool that I really want to roll out, and I'm hoping to be able to share this on a national scale as well, that we can actually look at every single student and see how they're doing, looking at what are some of the factors that might be keeping them. Sometimes it's simple things like confidence level. A lot of students you hear like, I'm not good at math. But man, when they start really believing in themselves and they see themselves successful, it becomes a whole different ballgame, right? And so when we start taking into consideration, how is a student thinking, what are they doing, and how do we see and be a part of that growth and development, then you start seeing progress. And it compares the student from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year to the end of the year to themselves, not
Mm.
to anyone else. So I'm really hoping that this tool will be something that would be helpful for individuals to be a part of their educational process and start seeing kind of those, what will naturally be, right, the educational outcomes, the academic pieces really thriving, simply because the student has that level of confidence and support and nurturing environment that they feel grounded to be able to grow.
Well, when it's ready, I want it for my own children, for my own household, right?
Okay.
Because I do the same
Okay.
thing. I'm like, well, your
Yes.
sister was doing this at X age, or, I mean, even
Hmm.
sometimes the 7-year-old, I'm like, well, your 4-year-old sister's able to make her bed. So I think you should be able to make your bed, and recognizing like,
Right.
even they're just wired different with that. Right. And so I love that idea of being able to, no, we're going to track you against you. And what are your goals, and where does that take you? And so, and already I'm seeing it so sad, Leticia. Like my 7-year-old who's really loves reading and we've gotten to subtraction in math. And already she's like, I'm not good at this. I'm like, who said? It's a new skill. Nobody is just takes up a new skill and is like a genius at it. So you do have to work at it, right? But already, and I'm like, but you've gotten faster at your math facts and subtraction, even just from a week ago, right? Like we need to. But it's hard. I mean, of course she's 7, right? It's hard for her to track that. And so what a great resource to have for a kid to be able to see, especially at the high school level. They have a little bit longer attention spans. They'll say, oh yeah, at the beginning of the year, I was struggling here, but then come mid-year, I'm actually feeling better, right? Which means
Yes.
there's opportunity for me to grow and continue to end up that upward trend. So
Yes.
love that. Okay, well, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
be on the lookout for that tool when it's
Okay. Okay. I'll
available.
keep you posted.
Please do.
I'll keep you
Please do.
posted. I'm refining some things, but
I
it's
love
been
it.
kind of near and dear to me
Yes.
for quite some time now, because I think it's the heart of the work and what we do, and
Yes.
it's important to have that sort of well-rounded perspective and support of our youth, and
Yeah.
them knowing that we care, right? That
Yeah.
it's not just about one element, but we care about them as human beings. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Love. Okay. All right. Well, I have one final question for you. Okay, as we wrap up, and it's in the spirit of my company's name, CheckBox Pro. What is one box, big or small, personal or professional, that you hope to check off today?
What do I hope to check off today? Actually, I hope to be able to do some collaborative teamwork with with my director team, because we are, like I mentioned, we're up for reauthorization. So I need to prepare a presentation and a site visit. So I'm hoping to be able to check some of that off today. And I have to say, I absolutely love and appreciate the support that we receive from you all, Missy, from CheckBox Pro. uh, my EA, Nicole, is absolutely amazing. The support that I get, just it's such a game changer. It really, really is. And I'm not trying to put a plug in here or anything.
I
So
did not
so
ask her to
please,
do
like,
this, y'all.
no, you did not. And so I want to say, no, honestly, I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And oh my goodness, like what a huge impact just to have my emails organized, and it's a game changer. So I know when you said things like, how do you manage like all the daily craziness? Sometimes having little things like that really do make a huge difference. So that helps me check off my to-do list a little bit easier. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the support that I get from you all.
Well, I will carry that message over to Nicole. I'm sure she will be glad. And
Yes,
I'm
please
so
do.
glad it's helpful. That's, we can't do your job, but we hope to make your job just a little bit easier. So
Absolutely.
that's our
And it
goal.
it does. It
Good.
does for
Good,
sure.
good, 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 good. Well, love having you on the episode. I cannot wait to just continue to see what you all are doing. Like I said, I'll be on the lookout for that student success report. But thank you again, seriously, for your time. I know you're busy. You have all these things going on. We understand juggling multiple priorities. So I appreciate you carving out a little bit of your time to sit here and chat with me. It was really fun.
Of course. Of course. No, thank you. Had a very, very enjoyable time. Thank you. I
Great.
appreciate it.
All right, listeners. Well, if you want to stay connected to Leticia, you are welcome to do that on LinkedIn. I will put that in our episode notes. You can follow her there. You can check out their, health leadership website to see what's going on there. And then, like I said, when I get the success report card, I will pass it along because, like you said, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. And if people are doing really great work, share it so that we can continue to help kids, reach their full
Absolutely.
potential.
Absolutely.
Lovely. All right, listeners. Well, thank you. And until next time, you have a great rest of your day.